Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, we are going to play a little game called Which Timberwolves Players Had the Most Disappointing Season So Far? About a third of the way through the season, who has been the most disappointing individual Timberwolves player? We'll also look at the greatest lineup ever as coined by John Schumann of NBA.com, which is, of course, the Timberwolves' preferred starting lineup. And then finally, a preview of Wolves Lakers on Friday night, the latest on the COVID-19 situation surrounding the Lakers. It's all upcoming on the show. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beacon. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. I'm also the editor of Dunking with Wolves, the Timberwolves site on the Fansided Network. Today's episode is brought to you by Truebill. Truebill is the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions you don't want or need and can even negotiate better deals on those you want to keep. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy weekend. Happy Timberwolves game day. The Los Angeles Lakers are in Minneapolis to take on the Timberwolves at Target Center on Friday night. Late tip, 9 p.m., which was a start time that was moved a couple of weeks ago to accommodate ESPN's broadcast schedule. We will preview that here at the end of the show. And in just a second here, I'll get into everything else we're going to talk about. First of all, though, thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. Remember, the show is free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms from Apple to Google, Spotify to the all-new Odyssey app. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at B-Beacon with two B's, two E's, C-K-E-N. All right, so as mentioned, we'll close the show today by talking Wolves Lakers. We will get into that preview here in a minute. And there are some COVID issues with the Lakers. They're going to be short at least 4 players on Friday due to health and safety protocols, contact tracing, et cetera. I guess it's just health and safety protocols now mostly. So we'll talk about all that. And in just a minute here, I want to spend most of the show today playing a little game called Who Has Been the Most Disappointing Timberwolf so far this season. And I mean, like, Timberwolves are riding high, a couple of big road wins at Portland, at Denver, a couple divisional rivals, all the milestones that were set on Wednesday. So let's just take a little half step back here. Everybody calm down. I'm going to bring the room down just a little bit with some sobering look at some of the Timberwolves' most disappointing performers. I'm going to look at 3 candidates for most disappointing Timberwolves to this point in the season. So we're gonna do that next. First, I want to look at the greatest lineup ever. And then as we get into that, I want to mention the milestones. I briefly touched on them in the post-game pod late Wednesday into Thursday, but I didn't probably spend enough time on the milestones reached by Timberwolves players. Of course, Karl-Anthony Towns scored his 10,000th point. He was just the second Timberwolves player, or is just the second Timberwolves player to achieve that. Of course, Kevin Garnett being the other. Cat did it in 95 fewer games than Kevin Garnett. Obviously, different eras. Obviously, Garnett didn't even start for the first part of his rookie year and was kind of not a bit player. I mean, he was a solid rotation player as a rookie, but didn't become, the big ticket until a few years later. Cat had so much opportunity early in his career, and obviously the 3-point shot and, more possessions, higher scoring game, et cetera. There's a lot of reasons for that, for Towns getting to that number a lot quicker, but notable nonetheless that it happened in 95 games, which is obviously more than a full season's worth of games faster than Kevin Garnett. The other important milestones, Anthony Edwards reached 2,000 points. That was I think he's one of 7 players who have done that in 100 games or less before turning 20 years old. I don't have the list in front of me, but it included Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Zion Williamson, Kyrie Irving, a couple other guys on that list, but all very good players who have or will be all-stars, or I think all players who have been all-stars. So that's notable. And then also, of course, Anthony Edwards making 10 3-pointers. He's the only player in the NBA this season to make 10 threes in a game. He's the first player in Timberwolves history to ever do it. And he's the youngest player to ever make 10 threes in a game. So all notable. Lots of stuff happened on Wednesday. Obviously, the win was the most important thing. And that was, a fun one on Wednesday, to be sure. The other thing that I thought was interesting is I touched on this briefly. I think it was Tuesday's show. It was probably Wednesday's show when I looked at power rankings. John Schumann at NBA.com does a great job with his power rankings and builds out kind of a case for each team to be where they are for all 30 teams. And I always learn something when I read John Schumann's power rankings, even about the Timberwolves, which is amazing. Um, and he decided to coin the Timberwolves preferred starting lineup as the greatest lineup ever, or the GLE. Of course, that's D'Angelo Russell, Patrick Beverley, Anthony Edwards, Jared Vanderbilt, and Karl-Anthony Towns. They came into play on Wednesday, outscoring opponents by 106 points in 108 minutes played together. It's a 5-man lineup. That's a plus 106 point differential in 108 minutes. The net rating was plus 50, which ranked number 1 in the NBA for any 5-man unit by far. On Wednesday, that lineup was a plus 18 in 19 minutes together, which makes them a plus 124 in 127 minutes. The net rating actually dropped slightly, I think from 50 to 46, if I'm not mistaken, which is just insane. It tells you just how good they've been playing all season. So a plus 124 in 127 minutes for a 5-man lineup is absolutely bonkers. I mean, if they keep on that pace, if they can keep this lineup together, if they play 15 to 20 minutes together a night, and every single time they go out there, they're like plus 15, plus 18. I mean, the Timberwolves aren't going to lose very many games if that keeps up, and assuming the bench could be at least passable, right? Um, and it makes sense that lineup is really good. I mean, you have 2 guys that are primarily defensive guys, and Patrick Beverley and Jared Vanderbilt. You have 3 guys that are offensive-minded players in Russell, Edwards, and Towns. You got some length, obviously. That's actually a really long lineup. I mean, yes, 2 point guard sized players, but both D'Lo and Pat Bev have really impressive wingspans. They're big bodied, or at least D'Lo's more of a big bodied guard. So there's some length there. There's obviously some athleticism with Ant, Vando, and Cat brings a little bit of that to the table. Enough rebounding generally, as long as Anthony Edwards comes to the party on the glass. But that would be probably the biggest shortcoming for that lineup is rebounding. There's just it's just a really well-rounded group. And 3 of the 5 of them should be above average 3-point shooters, Towns, D'Lo, and Pat Bev, and Ant isn't far away. And 4 of the 5 of them can shoot threes. And I guess Vando's hit a couple of corner threes in the last week too. So again, very well-rounded lineup. Fascinating to watch what the net rating and the plus minus looks like for that 5-man grouping as we move forward through the season. So we will definitely keep an eye on that. Okay, I want to get into the conversation of the worst, or I should not the worst, the most disappointing Timberwolves player to this point in this season. Have a little competition between 3 players. So we're going to do that next. First, though, let's talk about the title sponsors of the show today. And that, of course, is Truebill. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam out to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or simply may have forgotten about. On average, people save up to $720 per year with Truebill. Because companies make subscriptions hard to cancel, Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in just one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. Truebill has over 2 million users and has helped save them over $100 million. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now to truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Okay. Let's do the most disappointing Timberwolf of the year competition. I think it's pretty clearly a 3-way race in my mind. The 3 candidates, I'll just lay them out there right to start, and then we'll go one by one. Malik Beasley, given the contract, given he averaged 19.9 points per game last year, shot over 40% from 3 as a Timberwolf, had shot well over 40% from 3. He has to be candidate. Jaden McDaniels, given how impressive he was, especially late in his rookie season, the Scottie Pippen hype that was pretty unfairly put on him a little bit by Chris Finch preseason. And I'm obviously simplifying that. It wasn't Chris Finch didn't say Jaden McDaniels is Scottie Pippen, but that got thrown around and everybody, McDaniels suddenly was this almost untouchable person in trades, by at least a lot of fans on Twitter. So Jaden McDaniels has to be in the conversation. Then also I'm going to throw Taurean Prince in there because he was supposed to come in and provide some 3-point shooting, some defense, some depth on the wing in an area where the Wolves had been lacking, and supposedly was going to be a better rotational fit than Ricky Rubio was, who, of course, was traded for Prince. That hasn't necessarily been the case. So I want to look at all 3 of those guys and what has been so disappointing about their individual seasons. Let's actually start with Prince. So this one's a little tougher because the expectations were a little bit murkier. Nobody really knew what his role would be. In fact, when I did the preseason, I think it was the Locked On NBA preview that I did with Josh Lloyd, of course, the Monday host of Locked On NBA, and also, or I guess it would have been probably Locked On Fantasy Basketball, which he also hosts. And I left Torian Prince out of my rotation. I kind of forgot about him. I was like, hey, I think Jalen Noel could earn minutes ahead of Torian Prince, and Josh thought I was crazy. And I was early in the season. Prince ended up, he started 8 games, or has started 8 games so far. He's appeared in 24 games, but he has a couple consecutive did not play coach's decision DNP CDs. Currently, as we sit here today on December 17th, Torian Prince is averaging a career low in minutes, or excuse me. Well, yeah, minutes too. Career low in points per game, career low in minutes per game, career worst field goal shooting percentage, a career worst 3-point shooting percentage, career lows across the board, which the per game numbers make sense if he's averaging the lowest minutes for his career. Now, obvious caveat, we're a third of the way through the season. His role's shifted quite a bit. He's been asked to do some different things. And so to be fair to Prince, you know, there's plenty of there's a lot less that he needs to do to get to an acceptable level where we wouldn't talk about him as disappointing than say Malik Beasley does, right? Because the expectations are so high. He averaged 20 points a game last year. It's fair to expect more out of somebody like that. Prince, his role was always going to be bench rotational guy, 16, 18, maybe 20 minutes per game, guard the opposing team's wings, to a decent, a reasonable level, knock down some open threes. That's kind of the expectation. The biggest thing with Prince is he just isn't making his open threes. He's put the ball on the floor and tried to get into the paint a little bit too often when he's been out there. And really, if he just makes his 3-pointers at the same rate he has for his whole career, we're not having this conversation about him being one of the most disappointing Timberwolves. So, it's hard to put him first, which is why I kind of ranked him third here because, again, the expectations are lower for him than they are for a McDaniels or a Beasley. But it has been a disappointing start to his Timberwolves career for Prince. Of course, he has an expiring contract at the end of the year. There's always the chance he's flipped at the trade deadline here in a couple months from now. And I will point out that at the time when the Wolves made the trade, I said that in a vacuum, Ricky Rubio's a better player than Torian Prince. That certainly been the case so far this year. I also made the case once Patrick Beverley was acquired that I'd rather have Patrick Beverley and Torian Prince and the second round pick that they got with Prince from the Cavs on the team than Ricky Rubio and Juancho Hernangomez. I would rather have Beverley plus Prince plus the pick than Hernangomez plus Rubio. I think that's fair. And Jarrett Culver in that equation too, in that trio of players, because Patrick Beverley's that big of a difference maker, and the idea of Torian Prince is still nice with this roster. Again, in a vacuum, Rubio is better than Prince. Fit with the Timberwolves, Beverley's a better fit than Rubio. Therefore, Prince as a depth piece makes tons of sense. He's just had a disappointing season to this point. Second on the list is Jaden McDaniels. I was a little bit lower on McDaniels' rookie season than I think a lot of folks were. I certainly he played a lot more, obviously, than I think anybody expected, and he was better than I expected him to be. I think he had a couple of really nice defensive games, and he was kind of anointed as this defensive stopper, and the numbers don't necessarily bear that out. He's obviously very switchable. His instincts are very good. His length is fantastic. His ability to get chase down blocks, to get beat or allow himself to get beat around the corner and then get, block shots from behind is very good. His rebounding numbers are basically non-existent, mostly because he's on the perimeter guarding wings for the most part. But the biggest issue for me is his lack of rebounding and his lack of feel / a jump shot on the offensive side of the floor. I mean, last year he shot 36.4% on threes, which is obviously passable. It's roughly league average. But this year he's at 27%. That's even after shooting 3 of 6 on Wednesday in Denver. He's 27.3%. The exact same number of 3-point attempts per game. His 3-point rate is very similar to where it was, just a little bit lower than where it was as a rookie. But his free throw rate's down. His assist rate is significantly down. The block rate is significantly down. The turnover rate is up. He just hasn't been as good as he was as a rookie. He lost a starting job early, and I was saying preseason, I thought that Vando should start, and I thought Malik Beasley should start. And I assumed Beverley would come off the bench, and I thought that McDaniels should come off the bench. We're now seeing McDaniels come off the bench, and he's played a little bit better. His game on Wednesday, I think he had 9.6 rebounds, if I'm not mistaken. He hit 3 threes all in the first half, but he's starting to get a little bit of a greater comfort level with the second unit and obviously getting run with the starters. I mean, When Beverly's on the bench, they'll bump Edwards down to the 2, put McDaniels at the 3, leave Vando at the 4, and that lineup can work for stretches at a time. But I'm glad that he's coming off the bench. I just think a lot was asked of him. A lot was heaped on him in terms of, oh, you're our defensive stopper now because you're better than Josh Okogie offensively and you look the part. So you're that guy. But he hasn't figured out how to fit in offensively. And the defense is still good. Don't get me wrong. He's a good defender. Um, but the offense is really, really tough. And he just has shown no growth in that area. And you can't have, you can't have two non-shooters on the floor around Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards when those guys are getting into the paint or operating in the post. In Towns' case, you can't have Vanderbilt and McDaniels or McDaniels and Okogie. You can't have two non-shooters on the floor. You can only get away with one. And that's part of the reason we see McDaniels on the bench and Vanderbilt starting. So disappointing so far, mostly related to shooting, but also some of the other stuff, rebounding, et cetera. It's the things they tried to develop with McDaniels in Summer League in Las Vegas, distributing, facilitating offense, driving to the paint off the dribble. We're not seeing those things consistently from Jaden McDaniels so far in year 2 of his NBA career. Again, obvious caveat, he's 20, year 2 in the NBA. We're a third of the way through the season. I recognize that my words could be twisted here, but I think this is a very fair conversation to have now that we're 33% of the way through the schedule. The number one most disappointing Timberwolves so far this year, no surprise, Malik Beasley. For the reasons I've already mentioned, I mean, he averaged 19.6 points last year, I think, for his Wolves career, and 51 games coming into this season. Malik Beasley had averaged 19.9 points per game in a Timberwolves uniform. In a Timberwolves uniform, he'd shot basically 40% last season. He was 39.9%. After the trade in the 1920 season, he was 42.6%. He hadn't shot below 34% since his rookie season. And this year, 34.1% from 3 so far, 11 points per game and 25 and a half minutes a game. And also from the field, just 36.1%. Beasley scores what he's supposed to do is score in transition, whether that's 3-pointers or dunks or layups at the rim, and catch and shoot situations. That's his entire offensive game. He's not expected to create, facilitate. He's not expected to run pick and roll very often. He's not expected to dribble drive into the paint. He's not expected to be a very good defender, although obviously you'd like him to improve, and we've seen signs that he's improving on that end of the floor. But he doesn't bring value in other areas, right? I mean, his rebound rate, assist rate, steal rate, block rate, none of that stuff's going to be sexy. It's not going to be impressive. It's not going to jump off the page at you. So he's going to score, right? Because if he'd score and make threes, that's his value. Well, that hasn't happened this year. Just 11 points a game. I've already talked about the shooting numbers, 36% from the field, 34% from 3. That means his true shooting percentage is under 50%, which is really poor, especially when your calling card is offense. Now, his 3-point rate is way up. 0.726, which means roughly 73%, nearly 3/4 of his shot attempts are 3-pointers. But that means his free throw rate is way down. We're seeing him score at the rim less often, even in transition. He basically doesn't rebound the basketball. If he can do, and now I should say in Denver on Wednesday, he didn't score very much at all. I think he had 3 points, but he did some of the other stuff. He did a little bit of rebounding. He had a couple of steals. I think he even had a block. He had a couple of assists. The stuff you don't expect to see out of Malik Beasley. When you think about Malik Beasley, you assume he's going to give you the 3-pointers and baskets, and that's it. That's where his value is. If he's able to do some of this other stuff, if we see the rebounds, the assists, the steals, the blocks tick upwards just a little bit, then we can get away with him shooting a career low from 3, as long as it is a little better than 34%. But we can get away with his offensive game not being as impressive. If he continues like he has for much of his career, where the other stats are non-existent, it's a very empty box score except for the 3 points attempted made in the points column when it comes to Beasley, then that's an issue if he's not scoring. So to this point, he's certainly been disappointing given the contract, given the expectations. They wanted him to be kind of instant offense off the bench. That hasn't happened. But I also think there isn't that big of a jump for him. If he makes a few more threes and he keeps up this slow improvement, incremental improvement on the glass and incremental improvement assist rate, et cetera, then he could absolutely shift my thinking on how disappointing he's been very quickly. I should also point out, because I feel like I have to every time I have the opportunity, that I've said since the beginning of the year he should be in the starting lineup. Now, I realized last segment I also just harped on the greatest lineup ever, and with Pat Bev and D'Lo in the backcourt, Beasley as a starter is not happening anytime soon. However, when Beverly was out and missed 5 games, or even when D'Lo was out and missed 3 consecutive games, I would have put Malik Beasley in the starting lineup. I would have given him a shot to try and regain some of that confidence with the starting unit. And I know he plays some minutes with those guys with Karl-Anthony Towns over the course of the game, but I would have tried to maybe mesh that a little bit differently to give Beasley the opportunity in the starting lineup at some point this year. Hopefully there aren't injuries and hopefully there's no, prolonged losing skids, but I'd like to see Beasley in the starting lineup. I think he'd be more comfortable than he is as a reserve, as a six-man type. So I want to get into the matchup against the Lakers here next. First, though, let's talk about our friends at Built Bar. This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar for that matter. Built Bar, filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, and high in protein. You get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. Built Bar gives you that extra fuel you need to bust down those mall doors and battle all the holiday shoppers. Or if you're just standing in endless shopping lines, Built Bar can give you that extra something to keep you going. So throw it in your jacket or purse. You never know when you're going to need it. Want to cozy up with something warm? Here's a holiday secret. Dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cup of cocoa. Let it melt a little. Give your beverage a bit of that Built Bar flavor. Plus, you'll have a nice melty Built Bar to go with it. I just ordered some of the eggnog Built Bars. They arrived today, and I'm looking forward to having one tomorrow. I feel like an eggnog Built Bar dipped in hot chocolate would be amazing. If you like marshmallowy treats around the holidays, you need to get your hands on Built Bar Puffs. They're light, fluffy, and marshmallowy through and through. Different flavors, all covered in chocolate. Tastes so good, you won't believe that they're filled with protein. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your order. Again, Built.com, promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. Let's also talk about our friends at betonline.ag. BetOnline has you covered all season long. More props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues their march to the playoffs, and basketball is now over a third of the way through the schedule. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today. Receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball to football, NHL to boxing and UFC, right on down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 and 2022 seasons. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's close the show by talking Lakers. So, the Lakers have 4 players in health and safety protocols that are going to miss the game on Friday. Russell Westbrook, obviously the biggest name. Also, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Dwight Howard, and Avery Bradley, all major parts of the Lakers rotation. Malik Monk was in the protocols, but tested out of them on Thursday and will play on Friday. The Lakers are apparently, this is according to a report by Adrian Wojnarowski and Dave McMenamin on ESPN, that the Lakers are going to try and get a hardship exemption to sign Isaiah Thomas to a 10-day contract on Friday. I had no idea if he'd play Friday night, but the plan as of this recording is that the Lakers would add him. I suppose that would be kind of the point of the hardship exemption, is just getting another body. Now, the Lakers have been playing better of late, despite some of the injuries. Obviously, LeBron's been back for a little while, but the Lakers have won their last 3 games. They won at Oklahoma City easily. They beat the Magic at home relatively easily, and then they beat the Mavericks on a buzzer beater on, I guess that would have been Wednesday night. And that was Austin Reeves, the undrafted rookie out of the University of Oklahoma, also played at Wichita State, was in the game and hit an overtime, game-winning three-pointer in overtime to beat the Mavs in Dallas on Wednesday night. So the Lakers have been playing with fire a little bit, and obviously have had a disappointing season to this point. What are they, 16-13? But again, have won 3 in a row and have LeBron back. So this is going to be a challenge, obviously, for Minnesota. The first time these two teams played this year, the Wolves came out victorious. And that was a game in which there was no LeBron. The Lakers scored just 83 points in that matchup against the Wolves. This was in LA. And the Wolves at the time came into that game just 3-7. They needed the win. Cat had 29 points in that game and 11 of 17 shooting, hit 4 threes. D'Angelo Russell was 22, went for 22, 7 and 5, 5 of 9 on threes. Anthony Edwards was very quiet, only scored 9 points in just 32 minutes on 11 shot attempts. Naz Reid was big off the bench, had 12 and 5 in this one. But again, no LeBron James for the Lakers. Anthony Davis had 22 and 8. Russell Westbrook had 20 on just 11 shots, but no Westbrook on Friday. No Dwight Howard, who had 9 points, 10 rebounds off the bench last time out against Minnesota. Anthony Davis and LeBron James are going to have to carry the Lakers to a win if they're going to win at Minnesota. And of course, they're fully capable of doing that. Anthony Davis has been really good this year. for the Lakers, and especially in helping keep them afloat when LeBron was out for an extended period of time. So it's actually, if you look at some of the peripheral numbers, these teams aren't all that different in terms of, I'm not saying playing style, but how the numbers have kind of come out. So the Lakers are 9th in defensive rating. The Wolves, I believe, are 14th right now. The Lakers also struggle to defend without fouling. They allow a fair amount of opponent free throws. They also are the 24th ranked defensive rebounding team. The Wolves are 30th. So obviously Minnesota's worse in each of these categories, but it's relatively close and a similar profile. Offensively, the Lakers shoot a lot less threes. They make more threes than the Wolves, although Minnesota is now up to 20th in 3-point shooting percentage league wide. And both teams are kind of middle of the pack in terms of free throw rate. So the Lakers overall aren't a great rebounding team, which is important to note. No Dwight Howard, no Russell Westbrook's going to exacerbate that issue for them. So the Timberwolves should have a shot to win on the glass. And if they can at least keep LeBron or Anthony Davis from going nuts, the Timberwolves should win this game. I haven't looked, but I would imagine the betonline.ag line with all the COVID news probably has Minnesota's 2-point, maybe 2.5-point favorites would be my guess. So a very winnable game for Minnesota if they can. These are kind of always the keys. Keep Towns out of foul trouble. If at least 2 of the 3 Timberwolves' best players could have big games between Russell, Cat, and Ant. And if you can keep LeBron or Davis from going completely bonkers, there's not very many other players in the Lakers that you would expect to hurt you. And I say that, and of course, we're probably going to get like an Austin Reeves or like, I don't know, insert random, maybe Malik Monk, Wayne Ellington revenge game or something. One of these guys is probably going to go off and hit like 8 threes, Dylan Brooks style against the Timberwolves is probably what's now going to happen since I said all that. But obviously Carmelo Anthony is still part of the rotation. They've still got a couple of guys, but a relatively top heavy roster is even more top heavy now, with LeBron and Anthony Davis going to be asked to carry basically all the scoring load on Friday in Minnesota. A reminder, I said this off the top, but this is a 9 p.m. tip because of the ESPN broadcast. It's the second game of the doubleheader. So a local Central Time 9 p.m. tip, which is crazy. So plan to do a post-game pod on Friday night if all goes according to plan. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And we'll, of course, be back on Monday as we get into next week. The Wolves play Sunday at home against Dallas. This is a home and home against the Dallas Mavericks. So they have Dallas at Target Center Sunday, and then they go to Dallas to play at the Mavericks on Tuesday. So we'll have a post-game pod late Sunday, and that will serve as Monday's show. And, of course, daily, Monday through Friday, all next week. As we get into the week of Christmas, the plan would be shows all the way through the week, including Friday, Christmas Eve, and then take the Christmas weekend off, of course, be back on Monday, the 27th. So still a regular schedule. We shouldn't miss any shows Monday through Friday next week. Thank you, first of all, to those of you who are, or I should say, first of all, last of all, we're winding the show down here. Thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. Remember, the show is available on all platforms. That includes YouTube as well as all your audio platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, and of course, the all-new Odyssey app. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and my account at @BBeacon, and that's with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. That's all we have for you today. Thanks again for listening to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beacon. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast. Enjoy Wolves Lakers on Friday night, and we'll catch you next time.